After my husband Roger Wilson vanished without a trace, he left behind nothing but a mountain of debt, and a baby girl crying in my arms. Bill collectors came banging on the door, smashing everything in sight. I had no choice but to take my daughter, Alicia, and live a life on the run, hiding from one place to the next. For 30 long years I worked tirelessly day and night without pause or complaint. I paid off every cent of that debt, built a modest fortune of my own, and raised Alicia into a strong, capable woman. I watched her build a life for herself, start a career, and finally settle down. Just when I thought I could finally enjoy a peaceful retirement, a video landed in my inbox and shattered everything I thought I knew. There he was, Roger, the man who disappeared from our lives. Sitting beside him was Eva, the woman who once tore my family apart. And there, nestled affectionately in Eva's arms, was Alicia, my daughter, calling her Mom with the warmth and tenderness I'd once believed was reserved for me. I had been planning to use my savings to buy Alicia a new house. But now, there's no need. A home built on lies and betrayal isn't one I want to be part of anymore. At midnight, Alicia finally came home with her husband Alexander and their daughter, Emma. I heard the noise outside as they walked in. Moments later, Alicia knocked on my bedroom door. "Mom, are you still up? Emma's hungry. If you're not asleep yet, could you fix her something to eat?" I had been waiting all evening. I had good news I couldn't wait to share with them. As I responded to Alicia and started getting out of bed to put on my shoes, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Without thinking, I picked it up. It was a message from my longtime friend, Maria. "I ran into them today, you have to know." Right after the message came a sudden video clip. Before I could even take a closer look, my thumb accidentally hit the screen and the video started playing on its own. On the screen was Alicia, who was supposed to be working late, snuggled up in another woman's arms, looking tender and at ease. Then I saw the woman's face, and the man sitting beside her. My chest tightened. My pupils contracted. The phone slipped from my hand and fell to the floor as I gasped for air, pressing my hand hard against my chest. Even though time had etched lines onto his face, I recognized the man immediately. Roger Wilson, my husband who had vanished more than 30 years ago. And sitting next to him was Eva, the woman he once pined for but never had. No matter how old he's gotten, I'd know that face even if it were reduced to ashes. Roger, who abandoned me and our daughter to run from his debts, who disappeared from our lives without so much as a backward glance, had reappeared in the most brutal way imaginable. But what shook me even more was how familiar Alicia looked with them in that video. As if she'd known all along. What was going on? Why was she so comfortably leaning against Eva, of all people? My mind went blank. My chest felt unbearably heavy, and my heart was pounding faster by the second. Outside the door, Alicia noticed I still hadn't come out. Hearing movement inside, she pushed the door open. "Mom, if you're awake, come on. Emma is starving." She didn't finish the sentence. Her eyes fell on the phone lying on the floor, its screen still lit. The video was paused on the exact moment Alicia looked at Eva and called her Mom. I took a deep breath, picked up the phone and held it out to her. "Care to explain this? And don't tell me that man isn't your father." 30 years ago, after Roger racked up massive debts, he abandoned me and our 1-year-old daughter without warning, disappearing into thin air to escape the creditors. Over the years I tried to find him, but he only ever contacted us when he felt like it. An occasional letter with no return address, a vague update before vanishing again. The debt collectors couldn't find Roger, so they came after me instead, insisting I was responsible since the loans were taken after our marriage. I spent years paying for his mess. And in the past decade there hadn't even been a whisper from him. I had assumed he was dead. But now here he was, alive and well, back in my daughter's life, parading around with the very woman who had once torn my family apart. It felt like a slap in the face. If Roger had even an ounce of responsibility in him, he would never have walked away from his wife and child for over 30 years. I will never forget those years. The relentless knocking on my door, the threats, the fear, the humiliation. Those days still haunt me. They always will. Alicia, realizing there was no way to hide it any longer, finally came clean. But her tone, casual, almost indifferent, made it sound as if everything was perfectly reasonable. "Mom, I only recently got back in touch with Dad. It's been so many years. Whatever happened between you two, can't you leave me out of it? He said he didn't have a choice when he left. He regrets abandoning me and wants to make up for lost time. We just didn't tell you because we knew you'd get upset. The way she said it like it was no big deal made me question myself. Was I overreacting? Was my anger misplaced? Had she really forgotten what our lives were like after her father left? When Roger disappeared, I was still out of work. I'd quit my job while pregnant and hadn't gone back yet. Alicia was barely a year old. The debt collectors came swarming in, demanding money. Money I didn't have because Roger had already drained our bank account before he vanished. They took everything of value from our home. And when that wasn't enough, they kept coming back, barging in, shouting, demanding. When I couldn't pay, they simply camped out in our house, trashing what little we had left, flipping over pots and pans, breaking dishes just to intimidate me. That nightmare lasted for nearly 6 years. I raised Alicia on my own, working 3 jobs just to survive, just to pay off the debt he left behind. It wasn't until Alicia started elementary school that I'd managed to settle most of the major debts. Only then did the house finally feel quiet again. Had she really forgotten all of that? Forgotten how her classmates used to chase her around the schoolyard, mocking her as the deadbeat's daughter? Forgotten those nights when every loud noise at the door sent her into a panic, thinking another debt collector had come to threaten us? Forgotten the tears, the rage, the words she once screamed, that she hated the coward who abandoned us? She must have seen it all on my face. The disbelief, the ache, the fury, because before I could say a word she jumped in. That's all in the past now. And besides, I just want a chance to feel the love of a father again. You can't expect me to give that up, can you? I can't believe it, I muttered to myself. I poured everything I had into raising you, and this is what you have to say? So, all these years your father was missing, he was with Eva Taylor? I lowered my eyes to look at my rough, cracked hands worn from decades of labor and sacrifice. Yet in that video, Eva's hands were soft and well manicured, untouched by a single day of hardship. Mom, Alicia said flatly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, Dad and Eva were in love from the start. He only married you because you were pregnant. You were the one who broke up a couple who truly loved each other. If it weren't for you, Dad wouldn't have had to disappear for so many years and miss out on being in my life. You were the one who never let him go. Hearing her defend them so passionately, I couldn't hold back the fury that surged inside me. I raised my hand, almost striking her in a moment of rage. You're going to hit me? Alicia stared at my hand in disbelief. The noise drew Emma and Alexander into the room. Emma didn't hesitate, she ran straight toward me, throwing her tiny fists against my legs over and over, shouting with each hit. You're a bad grandma. I hate you. You're mean to my mom. You're a terrible, awful grandma. I like Eva better. I don't like you, you're old and ugly. Alexander stood there awkwardly, making no attempt to stop her. My heart sank. In that moment it hit me, cruel and clear. To them I'd always been nothing more than an outsider in this house. I was the one who raised Alicia single-handedly. When she got married and threw herself into her career, it was only natural she called me to help raise Emma. I spent my entire life working, sacrificing, giving everything I had. And in the end I raised 2 thankless souls. I reached out to gently push Emma away. I barely touched her, but she stumbled and fell on her backside, bursting into a dramatic ear-piercing wail. Alicia shot me a furious glare and rushed to scoop her daughter into her arms, her eyes red with anger. Dad was right, she snapped. You always explode like some hysterical lunatic whenever things don't go your way. So what if Emma hit you a few times? She's just a child. No wonder Dad left you for 30 years. I stared at her, stunned. I couldn't believe those cruel, gut-wrenching words had come from my own daughter's mouth. So now you're saying it's my fault your father abandoned us? A flicker of guilt crossed Alicia's face, but she still spoke coldly, defensively. That's not what I meant. I'm just saying, what's done is done. Can't you stop making a scene? But I was already too tired, too hurt, to argue with her anymore. Give me Roger's phone number. She froze. Her whole posture changed, suddenly alert, guarded, suspicious. Mom, you're not planning to go after Dad and Eva, are you? I took a deep breath. I couldn't believe how foolish my daughter had become. I paid off your father's debts for decades. Now that he's back, why shouldn't I ask for what's owed to me? The bitterness in my heart was suffocating. All those years of sacrifice, reduced to nothing in her eyes. And Alicia, without missing a beat, snapped back. You have no right to ask him for anything. You chose to pay those debts. I let out a bitter laugh, staring at the daughter I thought I knew. In that moment I realized I'd never truly known her at all. I raised her for more than 30 years, yet in her heart, I couldn't compare to a father who had never lifted a finger for her. I was done. Get out, I said, my voice shaking with fury. I don't want to see you again. This is my house. If anyone's leaving, it's you. Alicia shot back, defiant and unapologetic. She was sure I wouldn't go, convinced I had nowhere else to turn. When she got married, I sold my old house to help her buy a new one. That's how I ended up living here with them. And back then I had already drained my savings paying off Roger's debts. She knew all of that. That's why she felt so secure now, why she could throw me out without a second thought. I let out a long, weary sigh. Earlier today I had planned to tell Alicia something wonderful when she got home. That all of Roger's debts after our marriage had been paid off years ago. That an investment I'd made a few years back had skyrocketed in value. That not only was I finally debt-free, but I now had more than enough to buy her a bigger house, maybe even a new car. But now none of that mattered anymore. Patricia, don't take it to heart. Alicia was just upset, she didn't mean it. Alexander finally stepped in, trying to smooth things over. He shot Alicia a look, silently urging her to stop. But Alicia couldn't have cared less. She turned her head and scoffed, completely unfazed by the idea that I might actually leave. Where could she possibly go? If I weren't supporting her and letting her stay with us, she'd be just another lonely old woman stuck in a nursing home. I stared at her, hands clenched tight, forcing myself to keep my composure. After a long pause, I spoke quietly with a bitter edge in my voice. Fine. I'll leave. I had struggled my entire life, thinking I could finally spend my twilight years surrounded by family, enjoying the joy of grandchildren. But in the end, all it took was a deadbeat ex-husband and an ungrateful daughter to tear it all apart. My life had become a cruel, twisted punchline in a joke no one was laughing at. I said nothing more. In front of all three of them, people I once considered family, I turned and began packing my things. Not one of them tried to stop me. They just stood there watching as I gathered the pieces of my life into a suitcase. When I was ready to walk out the door, Alicia suddenly called out, "Mom." For a second my heart softened. I almost turned back. After all, she was still my daughter. I had poured everything I had into raising her. What mother could truly stop loving her child? I thought maybe, just maybe, she was going to ask me to stay. I was wrong. I turned around just in time to hear her say, "You can leave, but don't go bothering Dad." The faint smile that had just begun to form on my lips froze in place. I said nothing as I slammed the door behind me. And just as the door clicked shut, I heard their voices from inside. "Babe, are we really letting you Mom just walk out like that? What's there to worry about? He's got what, maybe $200 on her? Where's she gonna go? This is just to teach her a lesson. She'll come crawling back by morning." Outside I let out a bitter laugh. So this is what my daughter thought of me. In a way, Alicia wasn't wrong. I really didn't have more than $200 in cash on me. Most months, half of my retirement check went toward helping her pay the mortgage. The rest covered groceries and basic expenses. That night, I ended up checking into a rundown motel for $50 a night. The place was old, the room damp and musty, and the bed creaked with every move. I barely slept. My dreams came in jagged, restless fragments. Memories of the past I tried so hard to bury. In the dream, I was cradling a young Alicia in my arms, begging debt collectors at our door for more time, pleading for mercy. Back then, sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. I was up before dawn every day working 3 jobs just to make ends meet. I used to tie Alicia to my back with a cloth sling while I worked, and only when she was old enough for the local daycare did I finally catch a breath. I had clawed my way through those hellish years, paid every cent of Roger's debt. And now, just when I thought the worst was behind me, he reappeared. The image from the video suddenly flashed in my mind again, jarring me awake. I sat up and checked my bank account. Then I saw the calendar alert. My monthly reminder to transfer money toward Alicia's mortgage. I stared at it for a moment, then calmly swiped my finger across the screen and deleted it. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a faint, fragile sense of relief. I got up, determined to start fresh. The first thing I did was buy myself a new phone. The old one was nearly 8 years old. A birthday gift I had bought for myself. Alicia had once mentioned buying me a new one, but I told her not to waste money and she never brought it up again. So the old phone just stayed with me until now. After getting the new phone, I called a real estate agent. I wanted to look at move-in ready apartments, something fully furnished and easy to settle into. What I didn't expect was to run into Roger and Eva. Even more ironic, we were eyeing the exact same property. There's a reason they say nothing burns hotter than hatred when enemies meet. That moment had finally come. Eva appeared out of nowhere, clinging tightly to Roger's arm, as radiant and smug as ever. She was well into her 50s now, just like me, but somehow still looked like the pampered princess she'd been 3 decades ago, untouched by hardship, glowing from years of indulgence. The real estate agent, clearly trying to drive up the price, made a show of it in front of me. These two just returned from Germany. They're planning to sign the contract today. I let out a cold laugh, eyes fixed on Roger. Is that so? Since when can debt-dodging lowlifes travel abroad? Eva didn't miss a beat. Tightening her grip on Roger's arm like she was staking a claim, she snapped. Patricia, it's been decades. Can't you let go of my husband already? Your husband? I casually tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and looked her in the eye. Eva had misunderstood one thing. I had nothing left for Roger but contempt. But that didn't mean I'd missed the perfect opportunity to mock them both. Are you sure he's your husband? Because last I checked, when Roger got himself vanished, we were still legally married. And over all these years I never filed for divorce. I glanced at her again. So you've spent all this time clinging to someone else's husband and still have the nerve to act proud of it? Of course Roger wouldn't stand by while his precious Eva got insulted. He pulled her into his arms, his brow furrowed in indignation. Patricia, I admit disappearing without a word was wrong. But I'm here now to finalize our divorce. I couldn't help but laugh in his face. Of course he wants a divorce. Now that I've paid off every cent of the debt he left behind. Not a moment sooner. He can have his damn divorce. But every dollar I spent cleaning up his mess, every year of my youth I wasted carrying the burden he abandoned, I want it back. Fine. You want a divorce? Then start by paying me back everything I covered for you over the past 30 years. Until then, forget it. Roger gave me a look like he'd expected that. You haven't changed a bit. Still all about the money. My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. Anyone else could accuse me of being materialistic. Anyone but him. A man who vanished after saddling me with his debts, who left a new mother to fend for herself against a storm of creditors, had no right to say a damn word. All the years of humiliation, sacrifice, and silent rage erupted in that moment. My eyes locked onto a broom leaning against the wall of the backyard patio. In one stride I grabbed it and charged straight toward Roger. You bastard. Who the hell do you think you are, judging me? You've got the nerve to come back now? I suffered for you, slaved away for you, picked up every broken piece you left behind, while you played house with your mistress. 30 years you were gone. Why didn't you just stay dead? I seemed to be losing all control, swinging the broom with everything I had, fury pouring out with every strike. Roger darted around the room, stumbling and dodging, completely overwhelmed. No one dared stop me. Not until I finally let out some of my anger and stood there, panting and shaking with rage. And just then, right at that moment, Alicia walked in. Mom, what are you doing? Alicia rushed to Roger's side, shielding him like he was the one being attacked, her face full of concern for him, and nothing but disgust and fury when she looked at me. Since the moment I left home yesterday, she hadn't sent a single message. Not one word of concern. But now for Roger, she'd shown up in the middle of the workday, dropping everything. Father and daughter stood united, while Eva, who'd been content to stand by smugly just moments ago, now casually sauntered over. Almost as if to provoke me further, Alicia deliberately slipped her arm through Eva's and leaned against her with exaggerated intimacy. Look at yourself, Mom, she snapped. Look at the scene you're making. Eva is so gentle and graceful, and you're acting like some shrieking lunatic. She glanced around the room sharply, then added in a suspicious tone, Did you follow Dad here on purpose just because you found out he was buying this house? Buying a house. Only then did I remember why I was here in the first place. I glanced apologetically at the young real estate agent who'd come along with me. Ignoring Alicia completely, I pulled out my bank card and handed it to the agent. I'll take the house. We can finalize the payment and sign the contract now. And please, kindly ask these irrelevant people to leave my home. The real estate manager blinked, stunned by my decisiveness and apparent wealth. He hesitated, unsure whether to accept the card. Ma'am, don't you want to negotiate the price with the seller first? Alicia let out a laugh, thinking I was bluffing. Mom, please. You barely have $200 to your name. Stop pretending to be some high roller. Don't waste their time. Dad's already planning to buy this place. Eva too looked at me with open disdain. Patricia, all these years and you're still the same, always needing to win, always so obsessed with saving face. I had no intention of telling Alicia about my investments, how they'd surged in value, or that her mortgage was now in danger of default because I wasn't paying it anymore. Instead, I simply pointed at Roger. Of course I have money. Every cent of debt I paid for Roger over the years. I remember it all. If he wants a divorce, he can pay me back first. The young agent beside me, clearly uncomfortable with how they were treating me, chimed in on my behalf. If they were never legally divorced, she could file a claim and demand compensation for all those years of marital assets. Eva's face flushed red, then pale, her expression flickering between embarrassment and disbelief. She turned to Roger with a look full of silent pleading. Let's see how much he really loves her. Enough to keep her without a name, without a title? But before Roger could say a word, his daughter jumped in to defend him again. Mom, please stop. We're family. Why do you have to talk about money? Can't you think about me for once? I laughed, cold and sharp. I wanted nothing more than to crack her head open and see what kind of garbage was rattling around in there. Roger, to his credit, still had some shred of dignity left. Seeing Eva's pleading expression, he finally pulled a check from his pocket and held it out to me. I know I owe you. This is a check for $1 million. Consider it my way of making things right. Alicia looked like she was about to say something, but the moment her eyes landed on that check, she fell silent. I knew exactly what she was thinking. She was already calculating how much of that money she could get her hands on. Thinking I'd take the check and, like before, funnel every penny back to her. I didn't give her the chance. I took the check without a word, turned to the agent and said, "Go ahead. Let's process the payment and sign the paperwork." Then I turned to the rest of them. What are you still standing here for? Waiting for me to throw you out? Roger gave me a look, then sighed. Patricia, let's go to the courthouse next week and make the divorce official. I didn't respond. He didn't know that 10 years after he disappeared, I'd already gone to court and filed for divorce under presumed death. Legally speaking, I wasn't divorced. I was widowed. I gave a half-hearted nod just to brush Roger off, pretending to agree. Once he and Eva left, Alicia, realizing I had no intention of talking to her, turned around and walked away too. Though the apartment was fully furnished and ready to move in, there were still plenty of essentials that needed to be bought. Thankfully, the young real estate agent who'd helped me earlier stayed behind and took care of everything, running around with me from room to room helping unpack and organize. By the time everything was finally in place, it was already past midnight. Watching her drenched in sweat, working tirelessly without complaint, I felt a pang of guilt. She was about the same age as my daughter, and yet, what a world of difference. How did I end up raising such an ungrateful child? I asked the young woman for her contact information and told her to give me a bank account number so I could transfer her an extra $1,000 as a thank you. But she firmly refused. Said her commission was more than enough and that she couldn't accept any more. I insisted, but she wouldn't budge. Eventually I gave up. After seeing her off, I took a long shower and finally stretched out on the new Simmons mattress I'd just bought. It was soft and plush, far more comfortable than the old worn-out bed I'd slept on for years. For the first time in a long while, I slept deeply. No dreams. Just peace. The next morning I was jolted awake by a loud, relentless banging at the front door. So loud it sounded like someone was trying to punch a hole straight through it. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I peered through the peephole. There they were, Alicia, Alexander, and little Emma, standing at my door with several suitcases and bags in tow. "Mom, is this really going to be our new home?" Emma asked sweetly, eyes wide with wonder. Alicia knelt down and gently stroked her hair. "Of course it is, baby. This is Grandma's house. And from now on it'll be ours too." Emma looked a little puzzled. "But, Mommy, didn't you say you don't like Grandma? Why are we living with her now?" Alicia's expression froze for a second. Then she quickly cupped her hand over Emma's mouth and lowered her voice. "You can't say that in front of your grandma, okay? And besides, I'm her only daughter. All her money will be mine eventually. Why should she live in this big house alone while we squeeze into that tiny old place? Even through the door, her words made my stomach turn. I didn't open it. Instead, I calmly picked up the phone and called the villa's property management office. Hello, there are some strangers loitering outside my door trying to force their way in. Please send someone to remove them, and make sure they're never allowed onto the property again. Within minutes, security showed up. From behind the door, I could hear Alicia yelling and protesting, her voice rising higher and higher. But when the guards warned that they'd call the police if they didn't leave immediately, the three of them had no choice but to turn around and slink away in defeat. After Alicia and her family were kicked out, she started flooding my phone with messages. Mom, you're really that heartless? I said a few things and now you want to cut ties with me completely? Why can't you ever think about things from my perspective? Dad only has one daughter, me. He and Eva never had children. If I stay close to them, their inheritance will eventually be mine. Is it really that hard for you to tolerate them for my sake? You used Dad's $1 million to buy a house. I didn't say a word. And now you're holding a grudge against me? Fine. Just don't come crawling back to me when you're old and useless, begging me to take care of you. I didn't respond to a single message. The more I stayed silent, the more unhinged her texts became, bitter, spiteful, completely out of control. And yet, watching her unravel like this, I felt nothing but relief. She was losing her mind over the thought of me having a single million. What if she found out there was still a sizable investment account in my name? God knows how greedy she'd get. In that moment, I had to admit, Alicia had inherited every ounce of Roger's selfishness. This family was well and truly broken. When the court date Roger had suggested finally arrived, I didn't go. I hadn't heard a word from him. Instead, it was Alicia who jumped in to defend him again, calling me full of indignation. You took Dad's money. Why won't you divorce him? I knew it. You're still clinging to him, aren't you? Eva's been so patient staying by Dad's side all these years. She just wants to be acknowledged. Is that so wrong? I held the phone away from my ear, afraid I'd snap and end up hurling my brand new phone at the wall. I waited until she finally ran out of breath, then responded coldly, Alicia, did all those years I spent raising you completely fry your brain? You think Eva has it rough? What about me? Have you already forgotten how you were humiliated as a child? Mocked for being the daughter of a deadbeat? Forgotten how we never had a single peaceful day in those years? While your father lived a carefree life with his mistress, I was the one paying off every cent he owed, working myself into the ground, raising you on my own. You really think that was easy? She was quiet for a few moments on the other end. But her voice came back, still full of resentment. But that's all in the past, isn't it? No matter what, he's still my father by blood. Eva is kind, she's just trying to keep the family together. What's so wrong about wanting that? That was it for me. The last straw. I laughed coldly. Kind? You really think Eva's a saint? You think it's a coincidence they suddenly showed up again? Now, after I've paid off everything and built a comfortable life? She's cozying up to you because she sees you as a ticket to an easier future. She knows I was the one who did all the dirty work and now she wants to enjoy the rewards. Through you. Think about it. Why else would a woman be so eager to bond with her old rival's daughter? You really think she's doing this out of love? I paused, then asked her one final question. I'm going to ask you once, just once. Who are you choosing? Your father, or me? The silence that followed said everything. Alicia had made her choice. She chose Roger, the man who abandoned us for 30 years and gave her nothing but a last name. Well then, that $3 million sitting in my investment account? She wouldn't see a dime of it. Fine, I said. From now on you're no longer my daughter. Don't call me mom again. Don't contact me and don't come near my home. I hung up without waiting for a reply. Then for good measure I sent her the legal death certificate I'd had issued years ago for Roger when I filed for divorce. Your father's already dead. Who am I supposed to divorce? A corpse. Then I blocked every single number and contact linked to Alicia and her family. And just like that I erased them from my life. I didn't even have to imagine it. I could already picture Roger's expression the moment he found out he'd been legally declared dead. That must have been a hell of a scene. Of course they tried to come looking for me, but the security at the villa stopped them right at the gate. Even if they did somehow manage to force their way in, I wouldn't hesitate to call the police and charge them with unlawful entry. Roger had spent all those years hiding in the shadows, scraping together a bit of money under the radar. Now he was just trying to come back, latch onto Alicia for support in his old age, and finally give Eva the legitimacy she'd been craving for decades. But he was dead, at least on paper. And until that status was reversed, forget buying a house. Even just functioning in society would be a problem. What I truly didn't expect, though, was the extent to which Alicia would go to please him. Word of me moving out of Alicia's house spread fast. Our old neighbors were all talking about it. Most of them looked down on Alicia now, calling her a thankless leech, and many still kept in touch with me out of respect and kindness. So naturally, I heard everything about what was happening on their end. Turns out, since Roger couldn't purchase a home under his current dead status, Alicia invited him and Eva to live in her place. Maria, my old neighbor, called me the second she found out. Alicia is unbelievable. If she were my daughter, I swear I'd have disowned her by now. Patricia, don't let it get to you. Just treat her like she never existed. You're better off without her, truly. I assured Maria I was fine, made some small talk to lighten the mood, and hung up. Alicia really had no shame, bringing them into her home like that. Let her enjoy the consequences of her choices. When she finally realizes what she gave up, it'll be far too late. What she doesn't know is that Roger still had an outstanding debt of nearly $1 million from years ago. A personal loan that legally I was never responsible for repaying. That debt had remained dormant all this time. So, of course, I did the responsible thing. I kindly informed the creditors that Roger, the infamous runaway debtor, had resurfaced. After that, I hired an attorney and finalized my will. Everything I own, my savings, my properties, will be handed over to a charitable trust after my passing. It will be managed professionally and donated to those in need. Alicia won't see a single cent. Once all that was settled, I booked myself a luxury travel package and set off on a months-long journey across the country. I'd spent my entire life sacrificing for others. First paying off debts, then raising Alicia, then helping care for Emma. I worked endlessly, never pausing to live for myself. Now, at nearly 60, I finally had nothing and no one left to hold me back. So I made a promise to myself. I would no longer live in service of anyone else's needs or expectations. From now on, my life was mine alone. With money and time on my side, I did whatever I pleased. I traveled from coast to coast, saw breathtaking landscapes, and realized just how vast and beautiful life could be. I used to think my world revolved around my little family, that I would spend my twilight years helping Alicia, cleaning up after her life. What a joke that had been. On my journey, I met people just like me, strong women who had also been betrayed by ungrateful children. They too had chosen freedom over frustration, and we laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed life together. After 3 months, I finally returned home, exhausted but fulfilled. Age was catching up to me, and all the travel had left me a little worn out. The first thing I did upon returning was schedule a full medical checkup. Time to start taking care of myself for real. But just as I was heading into the hospital, I ran into Alicia. She stormed up to me, blocking the entrance, her face twisted with rage, not caring who was watching. "Mom, why didn't you tell me Dad's debts weren't paid off? You took his money, how could you? Do you know what kind of mess this has caused? Those people came straight to our house. What's Alexander supposed to think of me now? What does he think of Dad? And now, I want you to take that $1 million and use it to put the house in your name so we can all live together again. If you do that, I'll let the past go, we'll call it even." Unbelievable. She really thought she could just waltz back into my life, reassign my assets, and write off everything she did like it was nothing. She wanted that money. Over my dead body. Alicia, you made your choice. You and Roger are a family now. I told you already, I no longer have a daughter. Even as I faced the daughter I once held so dearly, I forced myself to stay calm. She wasn't worth my anger, and I had no intention of letting her drain another ounce of my energy. She faltered the moment she saw my indifference. Her confidence, the arrogance she always wore like armor, suddenly cracked. Because deep down she'd always believed I would never truly abandon her. That was the root of her boldness. The cruel words, the betrayal, the manipulation. She never feared the consequences. In her mind, I'd always be the mother who forgave, who folded, who crawled back after every fight, simply because I had only one daughter. But I'd already let that go. She was 30 years old now, married with a family of her own. I had fulfilled every duty a mother could. And judging from her selfishness and greed, I no longer had the illusion that she'd ever care for me in my old age. If one day I really did grow too old to manage, I'd simply take my money and check into the finest retirement home I could find. Mom, her voice softened. I'm sorry, okay? I was wrong. I shouldn't have picked a fight with you over Dad. Please don't be angry anymore. Forgive me, will you? She said all the right words, but there wasn't a trace of guilt in her eyes. None. Just calculation. And let's be clear, I never said she couldn't reconnect with Roger. That was her own projection, her own guilt, her own paranoia. What I couldn't accept was how easily she could tell me to get out of her house. How quickly she could wrap her arms around the woman who shattered our family as if I, her mother, had never existed. You're not the one who's wrong, I said quietly. The mistake was mine for not raising you better. She flushed with embarrassment, her expression twisting with frustration. I knew what she was thinking. Why isn't she forgiving me? Why isn't this playing out like it always has? She thought one apology would be enough. That I'd fall right back into my old role. Humble, forgiving, desperate to patch things up. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I sighed, then decided it was better to lay everything on the table. Let me make it simple for you. Even if I forgave you, you still wouldn't get a dime. I've already written my will. Every dollar, every property I own will go to charity after I die. It'll fund education for underprivileged children, kids who actually deserve a chance. So if you've got time to chase after my money, maybe put it toward doing something meaningful with your life. And as for your precious father, that $1 million he gave me? That was my rightful compensation. I'm not giving it back, not now, not ever. And don't forget, he still has over $1 million in debt. That's his personal responsibility, not mine. He wanted to buy a mansion, didn't he? Let's see if he's really as rich as he claims. Surely a successful man like him wouldn't be scrambling over a few $100,000, right? Alicia's face went pale the second I mentioned the will. You wrote a will? Who said you could do that? How could you be so selfish? Mom, why are you doing this to me? That's still my father's money. It should have been mine in the end. You're just hoarding it to make me suffer. She was practically shrieking, like I'd robbed her of something she was entitled to, like I was some heartless villain, instead of the mother who had sacrificed everything for her. Think whatever you want, I said flatly. I was done wasting breath. I'd waited weeks for this appointment at one of the top private hospitals in the city. If I didn't check in soon, I'd miss my slot entirely. I brushed past her and walked toward the entrance, not even glancing back. Alicia stood there, fuming, stomping her foot in frustration, but all she could do was glare at my back as I walked away, calm, composed, and finally free. By the time I finished my full-body checkup, the sky had already begun to darken. Thankfully, nothing serious showed up, just years of accumulated fatigue and internal strain that needed time, rest, and proper care to heal. When I stepped out of the hospital, Alicia was long gone from where she had been earlier. I didn't think twice about it. I assumed now that everything had been made perfectly clear she would finally give up. But I underestimated her persistence. This time she brought Emma along, thinking that a child's presence might soften me. Since they still couldn't get past the gates of the villa community, they waited outside, hoping to intercept me. Grandma, I missed you so much. Emma's sweet little voice rang out the moment she saw me. She smiled brightly and came running toward me, arms outstretched. But that smile, the same one I'd once found so endearing, now only reminded me of the day she screamed how much she hated me, parroting her mother's disdain. I didn't respond the way they expected. Instead of opening my arms to catch her, I quietly shifted to the side. Emma stumbled forward, missing her mark, nearly falling. She turned to me in confusion, clearly startled. Maybe she was too young to understand what had just happened, or maybe she'd simply forgotten all of Alicia's rehearsed instructions. And then, as expected, the mask fell. She burst into tears and screamed, no longer pretending to be sweet. Bad grandma. I don't like you. I hate you. I never want to see you again. Alicia rushed to her side, quickly covering her mouth, forcing a smile at me. Mom, she's just a kid, she doesn't mean any of that. She was saying how much she missed you before we came. Emma kept crying for a while before finally quieting down, her small face still scowling at me with resentment. Children don't know how to lie, not really. It was clear that under Alicia and Alexander's influence, she'd long stopped seeing me as her grandmother. And yet I was the one who fed her bottles, changed her diapers, stayed up at night to comfort her. I had no patience left. I didn't even want to look at them anymore. Don't come looking for me again, I said coldly. I've told you already, you're not getting a single cent from me. But Alicia, instead of walking away, suddenly dropped to her knees in front of me, her eyes red and swollen. I was caught completely off guard. What the hell are you doing? Even if you kneel, it won't change a thing. Mom, her voice broke and tears finally started pouring down her face. Something happened. Everything's fallen apart. Dad took Eva and ran off with all our savings. Every penny. Alexander said, if I can't get the money back, he's going to divorce me. When the debt collector, who had long written off the possibility of ever seeing that money again, found out Roger was back, of course he came knocking. At first, Roger played the part of a reformed man. Said he'd made it in business, said he could absolutely repay the debt. The collector, taken in by his polished appearance and confident words, gave him a few days' grace. But the truth was, Roger didn't have that kind of money. If he did, he wouldn't have been mooching off Alicia in the first place. It didn't take long before the debt collector realized he'd been duped again. Roger clearly had no intention of paying anything back. He was even preparing to disappear just like he had all those years ago. Panic set in. The collector began showing up at Alicia's doorstep every day, shouting and demanding repayment, turning their household into chaos. That's when Roger got desperate. He came crawling to me trying to get back the $1 million check he'd given me. Patricia, come on, we were married once. Just give me that money back for now. I swear I'll return it when things settle down. He spoke with the kind of humility he hadn't shown in years. No longer the smug man I'd seen standing next to Eva at the open house. I looked at him and felt nothing but contempt. The same man who had vanished for 3 decades, leaving me to drown in his debts while he lived blissfully with his mistress, now had the audacity to ask for a favor? What a joke. If you want me to consider it, Roger, get on your knees and apologize. It was a cruel little jab, a sarcastic throwaway line. But to my surprise, he actually did it. He dropped to his knees and begged, shame and desperation etched into his face. I glanced toward Eva and raised my brows. She should kneel too. She's been enjoying the good life all these years while I was stuck cleaning up your mess. A little bow of apology from her wouldn't be too much, don't you think? Roger's pride twisted in his face, but he turned to Eva and said through gritted teeth, Eva, just do it. For me. For us. Eva's face flushed red, then white, her lips trembling in outrage. You want me to kneel to her? Her voice was shrill, sharp as broken glass. I smiled mockingly. Don't want to kneel? Then don't bother asking for the money. Roger clenched his jaw and gave her a pleading look. And eventually, despite every bit of fury and humiliation, Eva knelt beside him, tears in her eyes, humiliated and bitter. But as I looked at the two of them groveling on the floor, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt empty. All those years of suffering, suddenly none of it seemed to matter anymore. I gave a faint, cold smile. I've thought about it. My answer's still no. Roger snapped his head up, disbelief and rage twisting his features. You're joking. No, I'm not. And if you try anything, just remember, this place is under surveillance. Any threats, any violence, and I'll make sure you get arrested before you even reach the door. That money you gave me wasn't a gift. It was repayment, for 30 years of debt and suffering you dumped on me. You don't get to take it back. I turned and walked away, leaving their curses behind me. They were nothing now, just a pair of clowns scrambling for scraps. But Roger wasn't finished. Since he couldn't get anything from me, he turned his eyes toward Alicia. She hadn't suspected a thing until she found the home safe emptied out. All their savings, every piece of jewelry, every valuable item she'd hoarded over the years, including the gifts I'd once scrimped and saved to give her, gone. At first she thought it was a burglary. She called the police, filed a report. But the investigation made everything crystal clear. Roger and Eva had vanished. Again. Just like 30 years ago. Worse, because Roger's legal identity hadn't been fully restored, tracking him down now was nearly impossible. He'd taken more than $30,000 in cash, and with the jewelry and valuables, the loss was easily over $500,000. That's when I realized, Alicia had never been struggling. She'd only pretended to be poor just to keep bleeding me dry. Alexander, unable to bear it anymore, blamed her for bringing a thief into their home. He gave her an ultimatum: recover the money or face divorce. With nowhere else to turn, Alicia came crawling back. She stood before me, the daughter I once held so dearly, now crying helplessly in shame and desperation. Did I feel pity? A little. Maybe. But only briefly. Because I knew, if I helped her now, I'd only be enabling her again. And years down the line, she'd forget it, just like every sacrifice I'd ever made. She'd still turn her back on me the moment it suited her. She needed to fall. She needed this failure to finally face reality. Why had she ever believed that a man who abandoned her for 30 years would suddenly become a devoted father overnight? Regret came too late. Go home, I said quietly. I told you before, I no longer have a daughter. She looked at me in disbelief, then broke down completely, collapsing to the ground in tears. But no matter how bitter her cries, no matter how much her shoulders shook with sobs, it didn't change a thing. Some damage can't be undone. Some wounds don't heal with apologies. I don't know exactly how Alicia managed to clean up the mess after everything fell apart. Only that, in the end, Alexander did go through with the divorce. Whatever was left in their joint bank account was split and used to pay off part of the mortgage early. In the settlement, they divided the house equally, but Alexander eventually paid Alicia a lump sum to buy out her share. Then he threw her out, along with Emma. He didn't even bother fighting for custody. From what I've heard, he barely pays the court-ordered child support, and even that meager amount never arrives on time. Honestly, I can only say this: men are all the same. What Alicia never knew was that, even before the divorce, I had already seen Alexander shopping arm in arm with another woman, their body language far too intimate to be innocent. Divorce was inevitable, it was just a matter of time. After the split, Alicia's entire demeanor changed. She became volatile, irritable, and bitter. It wasn't long before she made a mess of a major project at work and was promptly fired. Now she's living off what little money she had left from the divorce, crammed into a run-down trailer with Emma. Eventually she picked up some nasty habits: gambling, drinking, spiraling down. By the time Emma was old enough to start school, Alicia couldn't even afford the enrollment fees. In the end, I couldn't bear to see the child suffer for her mother's choices. I contacted a nearby school and quietly prepaid several years of tuition for her, anonymously. Because no matter what, a child deserves an education. Of course, Alicia never knew it was me who made that possible. I made sure of that. Yes, I softened again. I admit it. But I promised myself that was the extent of it. No more. If Alicia can't pull herself together after all this, then no one, not even her own mother, can save her. As for Roger and Eva, there's finally some new information from the police. Turns out their so-called business ventures, over the years, were far from legitimate. It didn't take long for the truth about Roger's so-called business success been brought out to surface by the police. Turns out the money he'd made over the years wasn't earned honestly, it was stolen. Roger had been running small-scale scams in different states, cleverly staying just below the radar. Identity theft, fake investment schemes, fraudulent contracts. He was a con artist in every sense of the word. That's how he'd managed to fund his fleeting life of luxury with Eva. But this time he wasn't so lucky. With both the debt collector and Alicia filing police reports, the authorities finally connected the dots. His name started showing up in old case files. Witnesses came forward. Patterns were matched. And the web of lies he'd spun for years finally unraveled. His crimes were no longer hearsay, they became hard evidence. Eva wasn't just a passive bystander either. She had helped him launder money, kept records hidden, and even posed as a business partner in some of the operations. When the investigation concluded, she was found guilty as an accomplice and charged with aiding and abetting. Both of them were sentenced, Roger for multiple counts of fraud, Eva for conspiracy and obstruction. They'll be behind bars for a long time. Meanwhile, Alicia hit rock bottom. She had no idea where to turn, no one left to lean on. But then something shifted. She saw Emma start school, a miracle made possible by an anonymous benefactor. She never found out it was me, and I never intended to tell her. But perhaps that act alone lit a spark in her. She began to believe, maybe for the first time in years, that someone up there was giving her a second chance. Alicia stopped drinking. Stopped gambling. Slowly, painfully, she picked herself up. She started working part-time jobs, one after another. Cleaning offices, stocking shelves, answering phones. There was no pride in it, just a quiet determination to stand on her own feet again. And every few weeks, a letter would arrive in my mailbox. They were always from her. She never asked for forgiveness again. She never begged to be welcomed back. She just wrote, small, honest letters filled with apologies, reflections, and regrets. I read them all even when I wasn't sure I wanted to. In time, the anger inside me softened. I couldn't pretend nothing had happened. I couldn't erase the pain. But I could choose to let go of the weight it left behind. So I contacted my lawyer and amended my will once more. A separate trust would be created, $200,000, to be released gradually after Emma is accepted into college. Monthly installments only, carefully managed. A quiet offering, not for Alicia but for the future her daughter still deserves. I never told her. I don't plan to. But I hope one day she'll understand, not everything I did was out of resentment. Some things were just love, buried beneath years of disappointment. As for me, I finally have peace. My days are my own now, simple, quiet, joyful. I garden in the mornings, take painting classes on weekends, and plan little trips whenever I feel like it. No one to serve. No one to answer to. Just me and the gentle comfort of a life I built with my own 2 hands. I don't know what the future holds, but I no longer fear it. For the first time in decades, I feel free. And deeply, truly grateful.